Today, there are still plenty of Philip Agees in the world, and the harm they inflict on U.S. institutions and personnel is just as serious today as it was back then. They don't all come from the intelligence community. They don't all share the same background or use precisely the same tactics as Agee, but they are soulmates. Like him, they choose to see themselves in a romantic light as heroes above the law, saviors of our free and open society. They cling to this fiction, even though their disclosures often inflict irreparable harm on both individuals and democratic governments, pleasing despots along the way. The one thing they don't share with Agee is the need for a publisher. All they require now is a smartphone and internet access. In today's digital environment, they can disseminate stolen U.S. secrets instantly around the globe to terrorists, dictators, hackers, and anyone else seeking to do us harm. Our nation's first line of defense against complicated and fast-moving threats like these is the U.S. intelligence community. I'm surrounded by talented, committed patriots. These are men and women who signed up for a life of discretion and impact, for a career in service to their country. These officers, like me, have sworn an oath to uphold the Constitution. They've signed secrecy agreements. They quietly go about their work and try not to get too worked up over the headlines, including the fanciful notion that they spy on their fellow citizens via microwave ovens. But they're not at liberty to stand up to these false narratives and explain our mission to the American people. But fortunately, I am. In my first meeting with the CIA's workforce, I promised I would serve them and the American people, both home and abroad, with the same passion and vigor that I displayed as a tank platoon leader, as a business owner, and then as a member of Congress representing the 4th District of Kansas. And that's why I'm here today. As a policy, the CIA does not comment on the accuracy of purported intelligence documents posted online. In keeping with that policy, I will not specifically comment on the authenticity or provenance of recent disclosures. But the false narratives that increasingly define our public discourse cannot be ignored. There are fictions out there that demean and distort the work and achievements of the CIA and the intelligence community more broadly. And in the absence of a vocal rebuttal, these voices, ones that proclaim treason to be public advocacy, gain a gravity that they do not deserve. It's time to call these voices out. The men and women of the CIA deserve a real defense, as does our nation. I intend to do that today. First and foremost, we should know that the intelligence organizations engage solely in foreign espionage. We steal secrets from our foreign adversaries, hostile entities, and terrorist organizations, and we're damn proud of it. We analyze this intelligence so that our government can better understand our adversaries that we face in a challenging and dangerous world. We'll make no apologies for that. It's hard stuff, and we go at it hard. Because when it comes to overseas threats, the CIA is aggressive in our pursuit of information we need to help safeguard our country. We utilize our whole toolkit, fully employing the authorities, capabilities that Congress, the courts, and the executive branch have provided to us, consistent with our American ideals. We do these things because it's our job. It's what we signed up to do. It's what our president needs. And if we didn't have a tough time justifying our budget to the American taxpayers, that too would be inappropriate. As the CEO of a security research firm recently noted, the CIA appears to be doing exactly what we pay them to do: exploit specific targets with limited attacks to support America's national interests. Now, our mission is simple in concept, yet incredibly difficult in practice. I've seen that in just the few short weeks. We work to provide the best information possible to the President and his administration so they can advance our national interests and protect our country. It's a mission that the CIA has carried out for years, quietly and effectively. So now I'd like to talk about what the CIA does not do. We're a foreign intelligence agency. We focus on collecting information about foreign governments, foreign terrorist organizations, and the like, not Americans. A number of specific rules keep us centered on that mission and protect the privacy of our fellow Americans. To take just one important example, CIA is legally prohibited from spying on people through electronic surveillance in the United States. We're not tapping anyone's phone in my hometown of Wichita. Now, I know there'll always be skeptics, and we need to build trust with them. But I also know firsthand, from what I saw as a member of a Congressional Oversight Committee, and from what I see now as the director, that CIA takes its legal restrictions and responsibilities with the utmost seriousness. We have stringent regulations, an engaged and robust Office of the General Counsel, and an empowered independent Office of Inspector General to make sure of that. Moreover, regardless of what you see on the silver screen, we do not pursue covert action on a whim and without the approval or accountability. There's a comprehensive process that starts with the President, consists of many levels of legal and policy review. Let me assure you, when it comes to covert action, there is oversight and accountability every step of the way. And I inherited an agency that has deep respect for the rule of law and the Constitution. It's embedded in the very fiber of the people that work at the CIA. And despite fictional depictions meant to sell books or box office tickets, we are not an untethered or rogue agency. And so while we've had some truly awesome capabilities at our disposal, our officers do not operate in areas or against targets that are rightfully and legally off limits. At our core, we're an organization committed to uncovering the truth and getting it right. We devote ourselves to protecting our trade. We work hard to maintain truly global coverage. We spend hours upon hours collecting information and poring over data and reports. And we also admit when we make a mistake. In fact, because CIA is accountable to a free and open society we help defend, the times in which we have failed to live up to high standards of our fellow citizens have been cataloged well over the years, even by our own government. These mistakes are public. They're public to an extent that I doubt any other nation could ever match. But it's always our intention and our duty to get it right. And that's one of the reasons we at CIA find the celebration of entities like WikiLeaks to be both perplexing and deeply troubling. Because while we do our best to quietly collect information on those who pose very real threats to our country, individuals such as Julian Assange and Edward Snowden seek to use that information to make a name for themselves. As long as they make a splash, they care nothing about the lives they put at risk or the damage they cause to national security. WikiLeaks walks like a hostile intelligence service and talks like a hostile intelligence service. It has encouraged its followers to find jobs at the CIA in order to obtain intelligence. It directed Chelsea Manning in her theft of specific secret information. And it overwhelmingly focuses on the United States while seeking support from anti-democratic countries and organizations. It's time to call out WikiLeaks for what it really is, a non-state hostile intelligence service often abetted by state actors like Russia. In January of this year, our intelligence community determined that Russian military intelligence, the GRU, had used WikiLeaks to release data of U.S. victims that the GRU had obtained through cyber operations against the Democratic National Committee. And the report also found that Russia's primary propaganda outlet, RT, has actively collaborated with WikiLeaks. Now, for those of you who read the editorial page of the Washington Post, and I have a feeling many of you do, yesterday you would have seen a piece of sophistry penned by Mr. Assange. You would have read a convoluted mass of words wherein Assange compares himself to Thomas Jefferson, Dwight Eisenhower, and the Pulitzer Prize-winning work of legitimate news organizations such as the New York Times and the Washington Post. Assange claims to harbor an overwhelming admiration for both America and the idea of America. But I assure you this man knows nothing of America and our ideals. He knows nothing of our third president, whose clarion call for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness continue to inspire us and the world. And he knows nothing of our 34th president, a hero from my very own Kansas, who helped liberate Europe from fascists and guided America through the early years of the Cold War. No, I'm quite confident that had Assange been around in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, he would have found himself on the wrong side of history. We know this because Assange and his ilk make common cause with dictators today. Yes, they try unsuccessfully to cloak themselves and their actions in the language of liberty and privacy, but in reality, they champion nothing but their own celebrity. Their currency is clickbait, their moral compass non-existent, their mission, personal self-aggrandizement through destruction of Western values. They do not care about the causes of the people they claim to represent. If they did, they would focus instead on autocratic regimes in this world that actually suppress free speech and dissent. Instead, they choose to exploit the legitimate secrets of democratic governments, which has, so far, proven to be a much safer approach than provoking a tyrant. Clearly, these individuals are not especially burdened by conscience. We know this, for example, because Assange has been more than cavalier in disclosing the personal information of scores of innocent citizens around the globe. We know this because the damage they have done to the security and safety of the free world is tangible. The examples are numerous. When Snowden absconded to the comfortable clutches of Russian intelligence, his treachery directly harmed a wide range of U.S. intelligence and military operations. Despite what he claims, he was no whistleblower. True whistleblowers use well-established and discrete processes in place to voice grievances. They do not put American lives at risk. In fact, a colleague of ours at the National Security Agency recently explained that more than 1,000 foreign targets, people, groups, and organizations, more than 1,000 of them tried to change how they communicated as a direct result of Snowden's disclosures. That's a staggering number. Bottom line is that it became harder for U.S. intelligence to keep Americans safe. It became harder to monitor communications of terrorist organizations that are bent on bringing bloodshed to our shores. Snowden's disclosures helped these groups find ways to hide themselves in crowded digital forests. And even in those cases where we're able to regain our ability to collect, the damage has already been done. We work in a business with budgetary and time constraints. The effort to get back access we had previously possessed meant that we had less time to look at new threats. And as for Assange, his actions have attracted a devoted following among some of our most determined enemies. Following a recent WikiLeaks disclosure, an Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula member posted a comment online thanking WikiLeaks for providing a means to fight America in a way that AQAP had not previously envisioned. AQAP represents one of the most serious threats to our country and around the world today. It's a group that is devoted not only to bringing down civil passenger planes, but our way of life as well. That Assange is the darling of these terrorists is nothing short of reprehensible. Have no doubt that the disclosures in recent years caused harm, great harm, to our nation's national security, and they will continue to do so for the long term. They also threaten the trust we've developed with our foreign partners, when that trust is crucial currency among allies. They risk damaging morale for the good officers at the intelligence community and who take the high road every day. And I can't stress enough how these disclosures have severely hindered our ability to keep you all safe. No, Julian Assange and his kind are not the slightest bit interested in improving civil liberties or enhancing personal freedom. They have pretended America's First Amendment freedoms shield them from justice. They may have believed that, but they are wrong. Assange is a narcissist who has created nothing of value. He relies on the dirty work of others to make himself famous. He's a fraud, a coward hiding behind a screen. And in Kansas, we know something about wizards hiding behind screens. But I'm not the only one who knows who Julian Assange really is. Even those who often benefit from Assange's leaks have called him out for his overblown statements. The Intercept, which has in the past gleefully reported unauthorized disclosures, accused WikiLeaks in late March of, quote, stretching the facts in its comments about the CIA. In the same article, the Intercept added that the documents, quote, were not worth the concern WikiLeaks generated by its public comments. So we all face a crucial question. What can we do about this? What can and should the CIA, the broader intelligence community, and the United States and our allies do about this unprecedented challenge posed by these hostile, non-state intelligence agencies? There's no quick fix, nothing foolproof, no instant cure, but there are steps we can take to undercut the danger. First, it's days like today where we call out those who grant a platform to these leakers and so-called transparency activists. We know the danger that Assange and his not-so-merry band of brothers pose to democracies around the world. Ignorance or misplaced idealism is no longer an acceptable excuse for lionizing these demons. Second, there are steps that we have to take at home. In fact, this is a process that we have already started. We've got to strengthen our own systems, secure our own stuff. We've got to improve our internal mechanisms that help us in our counterintelligence mission. And all of us in the IC had a wake-up call after Snowden's treachery. Unfortunately, the threat has not abated. And while I can't go into detail about the exact steps, I can assure you our defenses will not be static. Our approach to security must be constantly evolving, and we will. We need to be as clever and innovative as the enemies we face, because they will not relent, and we will not either. We can't truly eliminate the threat, but we can mitigate and manage it, and this relies on a defense in depth, which we are preparing. It depends on a fundamental change in how we address digital problems, understanding best practices that evolve in real time. Third, we have to recognize that we can no longer allow Assange and his colleagues the latitude to use free speech values against us, To give them the space to crush us with misappropriated secrets is a perversion of what our great Constitution stands for. It ends now. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, we need to deepen the trust between the intelligence community and the citizens that we aim to protect. At CIA, I can assure you that we are committed to earning that very trust every day. We know that we can never take it for granted. We must continue to be as open as possible with the American people. As the CIA director, it is my sworn duty to uphold the Constitution and defend our national security. And as somebody who practiced law, built businesses, and ran for public office to represent my neighbors and fellow citizens, I understand why nobody should have to blindly place their trust in government. Granted, the intelligence arena can never be as transparent as other parts of our government. Secrecy is essential to the task that we undertake. But we can do better than we have. And even if we can't share everything with the American people, we can share it with the president they elected and with the Congress that oversees our work. Having served on that committee myself, I am a CIA director who fully understands the imperative for oversight. Doing right by the American people is as important to me as carrying out our agency's mission, and I'll hold all of our officers to the same standards. The men and women I work with at Langley are patriots, and I'm honored beyond imagination to lead them. They have my trust, they have my faith, and as long as I am lucky enough to have the best job in the world, I promise you that the CIA will be tireless in our mission to keep America safe.
Director Pompeo, it's quite a declaration on your part in terms of not only an indictment of WikiLeaks, but also a declaration that there are non-state intelligence services actively working against U.S. interests and working with our adversaries, potentially. Why, in your first remarks, why talk about this? Are you worried that this is kind of the new phase of counterintelligence and intelligence work? Are you worried that the Russians are continuing to exploit WikiLeaks? Are you worried that other adversaries like the Iranians or the North Koreans are beginning to look at this model as an effective model? Why focus on this issue?
So I had intended to make my first remarks sometime in June of 2019. It's one of the great graces of this new role. But having now had the chance to observe the risk that is presented by these non-state hostile intelligence agencies, I wanted to make sure that the American people understood the threat that they pose to us. They may be small, and I mentioned one particular character a few times, but it's much bigger than that. It's much broader and deeper than that. And frankly, I think the United States government has not done nearly enough to protect our nation, our cyber infrastructure, all the things that are at risk from those threats. We have spent a lot of time looking at hard targets, nation-state actors, but now have this new threat sitting out there, which behaves in a slightly different way, but has as its motive the destruction of America in the very same way that those countries do. And they have now found, as you suggested, a model that says we will actively go out and work, we will recruit, we will do all the things that intelligence agencies that are hostile to us do, and align ourselves with other nation states that might well have a vested interest in that. It is dangerous, and I wanted to make sure that I clearly articulated that the intelligence community, and I think the United States government in its entirety, have an obligation, and I'm confident this administration will pursue them with great vigor. I'd say this too. I had a question, I think it was a week or 10 days ago, I was asked, it was about something some world leader had said that was just clearly false, and I was asked, well, what are you doing to disprove that? And this was a journalist who asked me the question. I said, well, tell me what you're doing to disprove that. Right? I mean, you're the fact finders. This is a central theme that we hear from journalists all across the world, is they are truth tellers extraordinaire. So I'm hopeful that we will get some of that truth telling from these people who will go out and do their own independent fact analysis about what all of us say, whether it's our own government, where they spend a lot of time, and appropriately so, but others around the world who are saying things that are just patently false. And the global media sometimes turns to others to debunk them, when in fact they have a great capacity to do so.
Let me take two questions here that take us back to your remarks. One has to do with the First Amendment. It says, you spoke about the need to limit the lateral movement Assange has by misusing our First Amendment rights. Can you expand on how you plan to accomplish that? And then a second question, which is a bit more tactical, but you referred to it in your remarks. Are you reviewing insider threat detection efforts in response to the WikiLeaks Vault 7 release?
We are constantly reviewing insider threat work and need to. If there's one thing that doesn't evolve, it's the threat from insiders inside intelligence organizations. There's a long history think dating back to Mesopotamia. So this is a constant challenge and something we have to be ever vigilant about. What was the first part? First part was about?
The first part was about the First Amendment.
Yeah, First Amendment freedoms.
Yep.
What I was speaking to there was a little less constitutional law and a lot more of a philosophical understanding. Julian Assange has no First Amendment freedoms. He's sitting in an embassy in London. He's not a U.S. citizen. So I wasn't speaking to our Constitution. What I was speaking to is an understanding that these are not reporters doing good work to try and keep the American government honest. These are people who are actively recruiting agents to steal American secrets with the sole intent of destroying the American way of life. That is fundamentally different than a First Amendment activity as I understand them, and I think as most Americans understand them. So that's what I was really getting to. We've had administrations before that have been squeamish about going after these folks under some concept of this right to publish. No one has the right to actively engage in the theft of secrets from America with the intent to do harm to it.